Very good morning and welcome back. Now we are having a very important panel discussion and in the area of the changing landscape in rural. So if you look at world over and you look at the progress that is happening, so transformation can only happen when it is happening in each part within the country, whether it is your metropolitan area, whether it is the smaller rural belt. So what is the kind of ecosystem that we need to understand from some of our distinguished people who are part of the panel? So let me quickly tell you, you have already met Professor David Grapes, Professor Islam, and Professor Dr. Datta. So can I first few minutes, I want each one of them to give their point of view, and then we move on towards some of the questions that I'm going to ask them. So may I ask Professor Islam to start with?
Landing, changing landscape of
What is the topic?
I think we give the
So we are just waiting for some people to settle down quickly. So Professor Islam, that my basic question to you is that what is your view? If you look at the overall transformation that is happening in, say, Bangladesh, so what is the impact that rural Bangladesh is undergoing in terms of skilling, in terms of entrepreneurship, in terms of more structured changes that is happening in education? How are they being impacted beyond agriculture?
Thank you very much, madam. Uh, it's a rural population, non-farm population rather, those who are not working for agriculture, not cultivating. But how are they doing? How to improve their lot, way of living? How to create jobs? What are the innovative ideas? So I come from a village, really. And over the years, when I was a school student, let me tell you, uh, one of my brothers, he had certain ideas to do something for the villagers. So he graduated from India, from Kuch Behar, and he started to teach them in 3 hours reading, writing, arithmetic. So evening schools were arranged by him. So in different areas, he used to go on different days. He created a volunteer group. They used to go and teach them how to write, how to read, etc. That was his job. That's what I saw. And rural population was much less. School means in the 40s, late 40s. Those are the days. You were not born then, I suppose. And people were happy in a way. Happy in a way, they used to play, in my village, used to play football. Everybody, rich and poor, used to play football, used to help each other whenever any opportunity came. That is how population started to increase. They started facing hardships, and the economy has progressed. Bangladesh economy has progressed. Rural economy also has progressed, but not to the extent of improving their lot substantially. To a certain extent, there is improvement. Job opportunities are lacking in villages. As you understand, what are the job opportunities? So, skill development, whatever the level of skill we listen in the morning session. So, skill of nature of skill may be different. You train them for a job which is available in a village, and for which you don't need huge amount of capital. For example, non-farm population, you said, buying and selling. Buying something and selling somewhere else, Hart and Bazaar, the marketplaces. They don't have money to buy, to catch fish in a river or in a pond and sell it. So they don't have the net even to catch fish. So arrangements have to be made to provide them some funds to get this instruments for catching fish. Some arrangements have been made, are being made. So a group of people, so there are rivers, they catch fish, they go to the marketplace, they sell. So group financing in a way, the microcredit, those ideas have spread to villages now. So group financing, the five of you, in a way, in different, not strictly in theoretical way. I give you 50,000 taka, you take this money, you do this business. Even producing something, small thing, which there is something, we call it murki, you understand, murki?
Yeah.
Semolina. With semolina, in our village, they made some kind of pita with this. Very tasty. And they export it to Dhaka. Now, from that village, it is speciality of the village. And we like it very much. My wife also like it very much. So they send it occasionally, and they bring it here to sell in large quantities. And they are earning money from there. This is very small projects. Daffodil International University, we have a student, textile engineering department, and some students of Dhaka University from my village, they have an organization now, they call it APON. APON means Amra Pararthe Nivedito. We are dedicated for others, that is the meaning. This boy, along with some Dhaka University students and other students from other private universities, they came to me, I think 4 years before. They said, sir, we want to do something like this. We want to help the poor people in our village. How can you go forward? So we want to have an organization. The name will be APON. Amara Pararthe Nivodit. We are dedicated for others. We want to do something for others in our own ways, not in a big way. But I appreciate it. I say, sit down. I give them some sweetmeat. You take something, eat something. In my front, take tea. A good idea. And they started doing it in their own way. They are organizing games, number one, football competition, different villages, not only my village, within the Thana, from the district, even from other, Dinajpur district also, it is in Rangpur, Nilphamari, teams used to come, actually to keep their spirit, playing games with different teams of different, it is a village, remember, our village. And it is different. Life is different. They are playing football. Thousands of people are coming to watch the football. So it gives them something to enjoy. You need enjoyment. You cannot live by bread alone. You need something for your mind and heart. And so the games they are arranging every year, number one. And they are trying to help money to small groups of people toward doing business in the village. And I told them that you go for, nobody will remain illiterate. Everybody must learn. The literacy rate is not that much high. It is much higher than before. So one of the things, I said, these boys and those who have matriculated from the village, let them send and go to each village, and nobody will remain illiterate. You do take this from me. You try to start this. So because without some learning, they cannot get job. Computer center.
Yeah.
Start a computer center. There are some boys, they have got money. At least they must learn something. Some computer knowledge is essential if they want to. So they have done it. So, and I told no guards, every guard must be matriculate. We have high schools in the village, in our efforts, we established a college in the village. There's a separate school for the girls there. So everybody must go to school. It's I said I want to say everybody must go to village, and every girls must pass the matriculation examination. And you try to do that. And I will talk to the guardians, fathers and mothers, because those people respect us. And they have taken it seriously, but the speed at which I want to go, they are not going at that speed.
Thank you, Professor. I think some very pertinent points he has raised. One of the thoughts that he's shared is there is transformation happening, but not at the pace that which it is desired now in this global economy. The very other aspect that is talking about literacy, which is very important for them to go into this turnaround. So whether they want to bring in new technology, whether they want to scale up a business plan, and for that he's also talked about the mentoring role. So I think one of the takeaway from what he's talking about is like large universities adopting villages and helping them in, say, transfer of technology, in skilling programs, so where more and more students can be trained, and at the same time also transfer of technology, use of new technology which can help and it can become an enabler. And finally, he also mentioned about government policy where villagers in a group of, say, few people who can be given finance to set up small enterprise, so small and medium sector. So I think, thank you, this is a great perspective of a village from Bangladesh. So Dr. Datta, would you like to throw some more light into you are part of Bangladesh, now you are in England, looking at from outside, and also how it is impacting in this global environment, and how is the landscape changing?
Thank you. I think Professor David Graves will be better off to say, shed lights about UK perspective, and because the place I'm living, one of the most crowded urban area in the UK, and half of the 310 languages that are spoken in London, one of the most crowded cosmopolitan city. But I would like to shed some lights on my experience in other countries, because I have actually traveled many countries, and I would like to shed two examples. One of is the Ghana, and I'll take another example in Sweden, and see what is happening. So what does it mean, changing landscape rural? You see, we are very busy within the urban areas or suburban areas, like city. Think about the Dhaka city. The time you are spending, the mindset you are developing. I feel that there is a disconnect between urbanizations and the rural development. For the last, I must say that after the 1990s, something happened. The post-World War, after 1945, we have seen that the way the world started to develop, somewhere there was a pause after 70s. 90s, the word globalization came into play. Before that, we never heard actually too much about the globalization concept. And then this globalization and the latter stage, early 1994, mid-1995, the World Trade Organization, they actually had the huge impact, the way the world was changing, world has been changing nowadays. So globalization, I feel that one of the vital drivers of the landscape changing throughout the world is not only in economics, in academia, in business, trade, communication, politics, and everywhere. So what's happened then? We found that some kind of, the divergence towards interconnectedness, towards, that effective or integrated communications in all aspects of those business, politics, and other areas. If I look back, I am from the country Bangladesh. This is my birthplace, from Kumilla. I'm sure that some of you know. And when I go back to Kumilla, to my village, I really can't recognize it. Now, that point I'll come back later on. So let us see that globalization is one of the drivers. And second drivers, we can see that technological development. And you have seen for the last few years, I can see that youth are in the class, and especially for the last 10, 15 years, the changes you have been experiencing in Dhaka, even at Daffodil, is enormous. We haven't seen that type of changes, technological changes. And if I look at that another point, that environment and the ecological perspective, the climate change, how the climate change has the multiple effect on urbanization, suburbanization, and rural development. And then obviously that the most important factor, which I feel that the population, demographics. Now, if I look at Bangladesh, demographic mobility is something different. The people from rural, they are planning to come to urban cities. The big urban cities, or some cases, semi-urban cities, one of the reasons that better employment, better opportunities, and other aspect. And however, when I look at the Ghanaian perspective, I found that there is some balance. I didn't see actually too many the population movement from the villages or urban semi-urban areas to mega cities. If I look at the Sweden or UK, you will see the different trends. The population actually moving from big cities to the villages or small county areas, you know. Now, nowadays, obviously, for the last 10 years, one of the big reasons is that employment. Employment means you may have the job opportunities, but one of the crises is that housing. The rent is high, and you don't have adequate housing in London. And you cannot actually buy houses. So many people are actually discouraged to stay in London, so they're actually moving to rural areas. And the professor mentioned something that happiness, peace, these two things is very, very interesting. The problem with the urban areas that we are towards the pleasure. More pleasure means less happiness. And I used to think that to have the happiness, the rural areas, environment, other things can give you the extra things. Now let us see, in Sweden perspective, as I was telling that, now few years back, the Swedish government actually looked at some of the technological mechanism, the way they can give extra benefits to the dwellers, the villagers. Now we have seen that most of the technological development and implementations are mainly happening in urban areas. So what they have done, I'll take just 1 minute. What they have done, they've actually started a pilot project of shops, a mini market, but humanless. There is no human, no customer service, no one. It's the machine-led, mini market to see. Because the dwellers, they know each others. So there is no problem at all in terms of theft, in terms of stealing products from the shop, or all are automated with the cameras. And they found that the dwellers actually like that. Because dwellers, they don't have the, how I can say, that pleasure of having the various items like as urban dwellers they have. So they felt that type of shops gives actually different types of satisfaction and comfort and inconvenience. And within few months, that type of pilot project became actually one of the vibrations, the vibrate product within that particular village. And they run through is around 150 at a time, 50 villages at a time. And I'm so pleased to say that the same project now happening in some semi-urban cities in Sweden. You see that means machines are taking the humans, and how especially the dwellers like that concept, to see that. We call it experience economy. Experience economy means you haven't seen many things, and you see something new, and some of the people, they like it, that type of idea, and you are happy to spend money. Even for this conference, I have seen some of the papers focused on experience economies, that visiting some of the villages, the good places. So when I see that people are from, say, Norshindi, Noakhali, Kumila, I always say that, can you tell me something, what is good there? So if you have something good, you can attract the people, come and go there, and that is actually something becoming experience marketing. My area is the marketing area. So we would like to see that how that landscape development in rural area can attract marketers and organization to focus on that. I think one of the big international organization called Tesco Superstore, that is UK-based organization, and that is third in the world after Walmart. And they have the huge chain. I think they have invested more than £1 billion in India. So what they did, that India urban areas are fine, but how they can actually penetrate the rural areas. So rural areas, you cannot have that type of channel of distributions or distribution channel. So rural areas, they have the different types of groups, small groups or syndicates, how they're actually taking the products. Unless you have that type of consensus with those small, that syndicates or the cooperative, you cannot actually, it is difficult to penetrate that market. And Tesco has taken that road, and they are now most successful some of the states in India. I think one of the core points is that we have to look at the opportunities we have in rural development and how a concerted strategy can be taken by government and the corporations, academia, students, and everyone within the nation. Thank you.
I think very interesting points, Dr. Datta. Beyond talking about the globalized and the technologically driven world, he's given great case studies of Sweden and how the kind of policies and how it has unfolded in the rural areas. One of the thoughts that I also want to leave before I give the, ask Professor David to talk about is now there is a huge mobile penetration into the rural market, be it, especially I'm talking about the emerging economies. And if you look at the second aspect that is also in my mind that I wanted to ask is there is a huge population if you look at these emerging economies in terms of a very, very populated. So keeping that in mind, how do we see this transformation happening? Both, and the question that I have for you is, of course, you give us a perspective of the UK, and what is your expert opinion? I think, can we take this?
Right. I think what I'd like to do is actually take it back to the human factor. Because when we're talking about rural areas, when we talk about small villages, we're talking about small areas of houses where you will find tradition, habits, and also every single family within that small hamlet, if we call them a small hamlet, knows each other by name. So the question would be is, what effect would perhaps an explosion of population, the effect of perhaps a corporate entity coming to open up its business close by, and how they would actually feel about it? Well, from a historical point of view, I mean, I was brought up in London, so you can imagine the amount of houses that existed there. I knew nothing else. But even within that large city itself, we had a couple of streets whereby we all knew each other. But those days have now changed, because one of the things now that you have to take into consideration is the huge explosion over the years and the migration of the many cultures coming together. There's also a huge expectation of those cultures coming from, as I say, different areas that start to increase the expectancy of what's around them. But if we go back to the small hamlets, they're very happy with what they have. They will produce and work, and their employment is focused on their needs, their immediate needs for that particular day, for that particular week, for that particular year. They're very happy with that. Now, in a certain sort of sense, I've now moved into a small village, so I can actually see the transition of how people see me now as to how I saw other people years ago. One of the issues that you do have is that when I moved into my village, there was only a small village of, say, 100 houses. In the last 3 years, that has exploded to 500. So in a sense, if you're looking at a timeline, you could be looking at first a hamlet, then a village, then a city, then a town, and then a huge city. So over a period of time, traditions and family values are lost. As the population grows, I absolutely accept that with the youth of those populations, that, and certainly the communication methods that we have today, their world is far greater than what we experienced. So they will start to see what's happening in the wider world. And they will have two choices. They will either try to do something on a local basis, depending where their family values take them, or they may decide to go elsewhere. And that means leaving that small village. A couple of other areas is the fact that when you have a huge corporation coming into that arena, you'll find that the workforce tends to come from that particular village. So there's a change in the wealth of that village. So families' wealth starts to grow, their expectation starts to grow, and they start to invest, etc. If that corporation starts to fail, what happens to the expectations of the workers that actually rely on that wage? So there's a lot to be seen, and there's a lot of elements that you can actually bring into these equations. But I think the main thing is that if we're looking at the definition of rural, I seem to see it from a human perspective, how it naturally, organically grows. Just by, if you leave a village alone, it will organically grow just like anything else, but at a much slower pace. If you force that issue, then those within that village lose their identity. They lose their values. And in fact, the older generation of those villages almost sees the intrusion of, say, a corporation as a disease. They don't want it. We had a time in the UK where local villagers could not afford their accommodation because everyone was coming from the big cities to buy up the properties of holiday homes. And so they had to do something. So they started to restrict the purchase of certain properties. But even that in itself demanded extra houses to be built. So just on that platform alone, it started to lose its own identity. From an individual youth perspective, I would always support them should they want to stay within the village to, try and make it better, or if they wanted to widen their horizons, to go elsewhere. So it's a question I believe is open for debate, because the world is getting smaller. Everyone is traveling to other countries. The indigenous population of most countries really don't exist anymore in itself. And I think from a cultural point of view, I think it's a fantastic thing. I really, really do. I'm probably a frustrated anthropologist because I love to look at culture, I like to study culture, I like to understand culture. And hopefully by doing that, they understand me. So that's my perspective from a human perspective, and hopefully that helps.
So I think great perspective, Professor, and we got to know what is going on in the United Kingdom, and also this whole aspect of culture, sensitization, and the willingness of people. I think that is very important that we are looking at. And there has to be an evolution, which I think is going on, primarily because now a young boy or a girl from any rural village, whether you say Bangladesh or India or any other, is seeing the world, and they're seeing it from their own eyes. And at the same time, in the era of Google and YouTubes, I think I have seen innovations happening from different remote parts, and they are getting picked up by the best of the institutions abroad. So my question now to the panel would be that as experts in this area, what are some of the thoughts you think that higher education institutions should get involved in so that they're able to contribute to some of their rural, growth of their own perspective countries. So I think I can leave it. Anybody can start answering. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay, so Megan, keeping the theme from a rural perspective, I think what I'd like to see is that rather than the university coming to the rural area, I like to see the villagers having the opportunity to be part of that university perhaps from a distance. Distance learning, online learning, that would be my recommendation, because I wouldn't want, even though we love academia, I wouldn't want that to be thrust upon a population that still wants to retain its own identity, values. And so from that perspective, perhaps programs of learning could be more accessible, because the communication nowadays we have allows that to happen. We have Skype programs. We can set up times during the day where we'll be accessible to our students. I do that all the time. So from a distance perspective, I think that's my recommendation.
So great, I think this is very important, and online education. So it is also going to solve the problem of access and affordability, because that's going to be much cheaper. So if you look at a rural province, they're able to gain. So the youth of rural province, they could help and get educated at much lower cost, and the latest technology coming into their own small, computers that they can learn from. Great thoughts. And Professor Islam, as a senior dean and expert in this area, how do you think that, educationist, you as a teacher, you would like to contribute and to make a change, to help the rural population to come up through education or else any other points?
Thank you. Education, not general education only, but skill development. As I said before, this special skill required for that particular village to do something themselves. That skill is very essential. As a level of skill may differ from village to village. And farmers are innovative. Today, they are cultivating so many other things we did not think before. So I think skill development through education. Online teaching, I think we may take some time, but that is also a good suggestion. It can go to our villages at the same time. As I say, a computer center, these things we are going to establish. And I did not mention before that, dairy farm. They are doing it. Fisheries. They are doing it in different villages now. You find, every house, little bit of land, they are cultivating fish now. Fisheries, dairy. I said, our student, he is now a big farm doing, he is bringing chickens for me from home. He's my grandson at the same time. So this is an area, fisheries, dairy. We invited government officials also. We said, your help will be needed. They came in from the district. Even the DC, we talked to him. So he said, you give good plans. If you want to innovate something, do something, come up with ideas, we shall help you. In our place, there was breast metal industries before. Those industries have died. So it is a little bit expensive, they need funds. And there are people who can make it, breast metal industry, that create jobs for our areas, not for all areas. So dairy, fisheries, these also are areas which can create jobs. One thing, and recommendation is, industry should not be concentrated near Dhaka and Chittagong alone. Industry should move to the other areas. Jobs should move to villages, rural areas, to other divisions at the same time. You see the density of population in Dhaka and Chittagong, why? Because everybody is coming to Dhaka and Chittagong. No jobs available, running rickshaw here. So there is a rural-urban migration. From rural areas, people are coming to the cities. Jobs are here, industries are here, hospitals are everything. So government must have a policy to decentralize. That is also essential. Not everything in Chittagong and Dhaka, but decentralization is essential for even distribution of jobs, industries in different places. That has to be done. Not everything in Dhaka and Chittagong in two places, and people will come, they will leave their villages. And now they are cultivating, on top, on the floor, cultivating, floor cultivation. ছাদের উপরে লাউ এগুলো তো these are innovation আগে তো we did not see before. These types of Shaikh Shiraz, I think he's doing a lot of job in this area. He should have come here. Thank you very much.
I think great thoughts, and in terms of the skilling, the need for more upskilling in the rural sectors. And one more important thought that I think is talking about the industry, role of industry in helping the rural to shape up, to become a better place in terms of not only the well-being, in terms of the happiness factor, which is very important, but their sustainability, their overall, the income that can raise, and that will help them not to come to the urban areas. So, Dr. Datta, I thought you would tell us, because you are a connector. You are connecting so many worlds together by organizing such large conferences, publishing so many great, volumes of journals. What is it that is in your mind that you would contribute to bring this more closer between policymakers, the industry, and educationists, or any other points?
Thank you, Professor. You know that when I said that the mindset of people, I'll spend 2 minutes, okay? I'll take two perspectives. One I'll take from Russia, that I was involved with the project a few years back. It was 2014. And another project I'm going to take again, my friend and colleague from Nigeria is here, Professor Fazir. And we did a 18 months project in Nasarawa state, which is one of the smallest states in Nigeria. Before I actually bring these two perspectives, I feel that what is happening now, whether it is rural or urban areas, whether it is in Bangladesh or India or Europe or USA, the basic problem is not the economic problem. Although in Europe they say that the problem is the money, problem is the economy. I always see differently that the problem is actually anthropological. What does it mean? Is our actually mindset, the cultural mindset, our we see that attitude. Now, if you look at the villages, the people tend to come to urban areas. Why? Oh, he or she is not here, so I have to go to urban areas for better job, better opportunities, better education, and so on. I think unless until we change that mindset towards gearing the better and the balance, that the field, will have that problem always. And that is happening, I can see, in Europe. Now let us see the two examples, how we can empower villagers of the various villages. Again, why? To bring peace and happiness to our heart or close. Now, that time it was Filipovich, who was the education minister of Russia. And I was so fortunate that he was my teacher when I was actually studying physics at one of the Russian university. So he knew that I'm living in UK and doing the various projects with various institutions. So I was invited by the Minister of Education to go Russia back 2012. And at that time, our Putin government taken drastic steps. One of the steps was that the academic institution, that I would like to see universities over the next 5 years to become top 1,000. That was one of the things. অর্থাৎ deregulation or reorganizing the whole system of the higher education system. And another step he has taken, how to actually renovate all the villages. And I am sure that as a young, you know that one of the world's largest electricity project is the Goelru project, which started actually Siberia. And then only one project is enough to supply electricity throughout the Russia. You know that Russia was the first country to have 100% electricity, self-sufficient electricity in the world. Means every villages they have electricity without any stopping or cutting the electricity, the power things. So what was the actually project? They actually, so few universities, I can name you, the 5 universities jointly has taken a project called the Mobile Revolutions in Villages. Now, somehow I actually begged, there is some difference when professor said that online education, many villages in Bangladesh, they don't have internet access. Even not only this, I have experienced many educated individuals, even the urban areas, they normally don't check emails or the online portal, even in Bangladesh, in urban areas. The villages, what they use, they're using mobile phone. Bangladesh is the first, #1 country, the mobile phone users. Everybody got mobile phones. Even I have seen on the street, the beggars also using mobile phones to unite other beggars. What is the best money you can get? So what this university has taken, a mobile-based, is the village revolutions. And that the first project started is called Krasnodar, one of the best fertile region in Russia. Because they have 3 times, that rice, they're producing 3 times rice throughout the year. So what they did, that helps actually to teach a special types of adult education to the farmers, how they can get better crops, during the season, and how to cultivate, where they can get the best prices, and obviously the government actually started to give the subsidies, and the various information, how they can make it value for money for the whole situation. And it was really successful. And you can see that Russia, I feel that for the last 5 years, become full sufficient with the foods and the rice and other areas. This is the first example. Second example, I give you that, as I said, Nasarawa state. And my team was invited by the whole Nasarawa state federal government to Dubai. And we are asked actually, we have a special training program for the member of parliaments. Now I actually raised that issue in Bangladesh, raised that issue that I think I'm fighting with mosquitoes. I'm fighting with mosquitoes. So this, the Nasarawa state is one of the smallest state, is I think 2 hours drive from Abuja to Nasarawa. But that small state is, how I can say, a high unemployment and literacy level is very high somehow. So the 45 member of parliaments, the whole entire parliaments, including speaker, deputy speaker, clerk of the parliament, they came to Dubai and we're supposed to give them 5 days training program. So what was the main training program actually? That how parliamentarian can be involved with the village politics in a good way. How villages can be actually developed and these farmers and the dwellers can be trained. So we actually developed an 18 months project called Small Business Portal. And that was funded by the World Bank. And we wanted to actually roll out this project throughout Nigeria, but we had some other issues. And we actually developed 6 portals in 6 separate regions. And each region has around 50 to 60 villages. So this portal actually giving the special training program, even the person is a farmer but highly uneducated, they have the standardized training program how to actually cultivate and basic ideas, basic attitude, cultural problems and so on. So we had around 15 special types of training program for the farmers. Then the advisory and counseling bureau. So these 6 bureau, any farmers can come and they can say that I would like to start this project, I would like to start the potato or whatever it is, I need the finance. So they are going to give them the systematic the counseling, and they will raise the finance from different organization or World Bank funded finance. And then they will monitor you see that whether they are doing very well. Not only giving the finance, but they will go through the project and see that whether it is implemented effectively and they have done actually really good and whether they can actually return the money. That was very successful. My idea is that educational institution like you have certain responsibilities and the obligation. I always say that, like yesterday we had the discussion, the Kantian philosophy of deontology. Deontology means I have the right to work, but that work should be within the ethical framework. So it means what is our ethics as a higher education institution to give back something to the society? I think you can develop certain projects that can actually help the villagers villages to develop certain innovative ideas so the farmers can stay there. I do not want to see everybody is coming to the city, isn't it? Let us see how we can develop that type of innovative ideas. Thank you.
I think great points, and I think specifically the case studies that you put through about Russia, your project in Nigeria, as well as in Dubai, and some of the models which can be replicated, I think that will be great. Another thought that I thought I would share in this forum is also about, the institutional involvement in the rural is through your social awareness program. For example, one of the initiatives that we had undertaken in India, that every student has to take up a project in the social adaptation. They do a project, sometimes it is in the healthcare industry, sometimes they're working out on the issues of a particular village. It could be related to any of the challenges that they're facing. So where an institutional project, and sometimes you get funded for it. So I think one of the areas that an university can look at is getting funding from the best institutions. Even USAID and many other institutions are able to fund such projects where as students, and it's a great learning. The second area which I'm also looking at is from these thoughts and the ideation, there is a huge retail revolution that has taken place. And I can tell you, at least for India, that if you look at that retail, all the big, if you talk about all the international companies you're opening up in India, they know where they have to go. So not only picking up talent and training them, so how do you create those spaces a more sustainable place? So right now, I would like to open up. So quickly think of questions, and you had a point to share. Yeah, on.
I just actually, that was a very good point that you made, but I'd just like to refer back to a historical project that I put together. A few years ago, I was involved with a small college, and the college was in the stage of growth. So many of the senior management board come together, and we all made our sort of recommendations as to where we thought the university the college would go. But we stopped there and we said, look, where should the decision lie? So we decided what we would do is to create a hall like this, which we did, the 250 students, and say to the students, you own this college. This college is yours. And we are going to create a project of growth for the future. We want to know how you would run this college. Bearing in mind, these are certain parameters that have to be met with compliance and various other guidelines thrown in. So there was quite a number of students. There was about 70 odd really wanted to get involved. So they created their own project teams. And over a period of 9 months, they actually came up with some fantastic ideas because they were outward looking. They knew what the students wanted. They were able to go to the other students and say, how do you visualize this college in the next 12 months? And over the period, so what would have took us, I suppose, 5 years to get to a certain stage, it took us just over 2 years. And that was all down to the strength and vision of the students. So I've always been a great supporter of student vision. And that's where my loyalty lies, because I think that's where our focus should be. But that was just an example of the power that if you empower the people who actually are your biggest fans, that's the success you can actually attain. Thank you.
I think great point. And so here there is quite an emphasis about the teams that can be created, empowered. So when you empower them, you are touching their lives. So team touch, which you are touching them and empowering them and transforming them. So I think great point. And so now we are open. Dear, any questions that you have, would like to ask the panel?
Thank you. In fact, few years back, what happened is Reliance created a bus and it actually penetrated into the market with the Reliance CDMA technology. Wherein, you mentioned about the beggars. So yes, it was just not the beggars, the rickshaw pullers, the auto drivers had a massive, the penetration actually took place amongst part of the economy as a whole as such, or the population in the country. Likewise, today, if you ask about today, Reliance Jio has also penetrated into the market, right? So directly or indirectly, it is just not the educational institution or the role of educational institution per se, but it is also the responsibility of the corporate sector as well. They can, like the Reliance Jio, directly possibly, they might not even have thought about it, that it actually could scale up the rural economy as a whole, but then indirectly it did that. So likewise, can we not think about the involvement of the corporate sector, how to penetrate or how to upscale the rural economy as a whole? For example, the online education that Professor David had mentioned, there is a recent advertisement that is going on in the tribal area because there is the reach for the education or the reach for the upscale of the urban businesses as such is really not possible. So the online platform is being availed through the technology, through the mobile technology. So this can happen as such, but at the same time, the investment is also required to upscale the rural economy. The platform needs to be created wherein just not the bus, but the investment also is the need of the hour to think about it. The stakeholders from the education can bridge the gap on the thought process, but at the same time, investments have to be made through.
So you need a response from it?
No, I thought
It was
to
a comment,
add,
yeah.
yes.
So one
Share
comment.
something. It's a very interesting point. When you talk about the CSR, even in India, that I'm so pleased to see that Professor Sharma from University of Delhi, who was actually heading the economics department, he just started a nice forum, and he was actually advising the Indian government on corporate governance and ethics.
Yes.
You see, corporate governance, the CSR, corporate social responsibility, the concept is totally new, even in India. Even in Bangladesh, I think many institutions nowadays don't use. Even within the financial banking institutions, you see that there's a lot of problems for the last 20 years, even in Bangladesh. I feel that it should come from top, means the government should, let us see the Indian perspective. Now, Indian government, soon the Modi government came, and it's make it as a standardized that big corporations, those are making profit, must contribute 2% of their profit towards the CSR. And it is happening now. And the big organization, they have the huge amount of money to contribute, and they're actually spending money. This is not the same as in Bangladesh. I would like to see that in institutions like Daffodil, the corporation sector, although it is now becoming something the government is trying to push forward, I would like to see the government say that any institution must have certain or minimum level of obligation. I would like to give you, the little example, if I may take. UK, I have seen, that few universities, they actually have the special club, and that club is a part of the social, the obligation to help farmers. And I was actually one time leading one of the club. They went to the county area, the summertime that you are taking picking up the apples. So these member of 10 or 15, they'll go to the villages and help the farmers to pick up the apples, but they will not be paid, but rather they will be given some apples to take with them. I think that first, the government should have the policy that all corporations, big corporations especially, making profit, and they have to have a threshold limit of contribution towards either it must go to the different charities, or maybe directly can be involved with the village development. Second, they can actually make it, that some is a provision for the higher education institution. They have to have some part of the corporate social responsibility that students will have a special program, and part of the students can go to the villages, not always, maybe once a year, to help the farmers and raise awareness. That can be done.
In fact,
Thank
very
you.
interesting.
Since we are also in the paucity of time, do I have any question from the students? Or any faculty member or anyone else? Okay, so basically, yeah, please.
Mine is a contribution. Just want to add to what the earlier speakers have said concerning the area of developing the rural areas to encourage people to actually dwell there. We have a program in my university going on right now under SEPTA. Now, SEPTA is encouraging farmers to produce as much goods as possible. And they are equally encouraging farmers to bring those goods after harvest so that they can be processed, value added, so that profits can be generated from those exercises, and then they have value for their activities, so for their productivity. One sad aspect of this exercise is that government is expected to provide minimum facilities in the rural areas so that people can actually enjoy their stay in the rural areas. If you go to my village, for instance, there's no electricity, there's no light. So if you want to do a small business like that of, let's say, operating a barbing salon, you can't make profit. You have to run generators all through. And you know, fuel is also equally very expensive. So it's actually a big challenge in that direction. We've been mounting pressure on at least the local government and the state government so that something tangible can be done in that direction to encourage people to actually stay and develop themselves where they are. Now, the big people that we have around that can actually do this are residing in town. So if you want to have a word with them, you have to, out of your meager resources, go to meet them where they are in the town. And that is further crowding our cities.
Right.
It's actually a point I want to add.
I understand a lot of important thoughts, and I think it's come from a lot of experience that you've seen in your own village. So I think what we are looking from this perspective is also the role of government, role of different stakeholders which are part of it, and we are primarily moving towards an inclusive society. And finally, you had a question, the last question for today for this panel.
Yes, I recently drove from London down to Wiltshire, which is west of London, about 80 miles, down the motorway, the M4. And I was surprised and shocked, utterly shocked, to see whole huge farmers' fields covered with solar panels for generating electricity. And this thought comes from what you said, sir. I would not for a moment recommend giving away agricultural or using agricultural land for solar panels. But it is clear that for this particular farmer, he was going to make more money out of selling electricity from these solar panels than he was going to make from selling milk or wheat or whatever else might come from that land. Leading on from that, therefore, I just wanted to ask, what does the panel think would be the most useful, sustainable, productive use of the agricultural land of Bangladesh? I know you have a lot of rivers and a lot of aquaculture, and that's great. But what will be the most sustainable use, and what changes in the current use might that mean?
Would you like to respond? You want to? So basically, I think his question is when we are moving and transforming a piece of land, because there's more productivity in terms of money coming in, and the farmers are moving towards, which is more profitable. And what is the better use of land? Would you like to respond to that?
I really don't know whether I can respond to your question. You see, for me, I feel really sad when I see that farmland are used to develop the industry. Now, UK is now, you see that at a maturity stage. It's highly industrialized, So now they are trying to get the soft touch industries to move towards the greener, the environment, green industry, green energy, and so on. So part of this solar panel is okay for them. But question is that, can they actually avoid not to get any farmland? Because they have the green belt, they cannot actually go to this green belt, so there is a big problems. So whether they can actually develop within the coastal area, there is another area. In terms of Bangladesh, there is something is happening different. It's not the solar panel, because we are not up to that stage. We have to wait another 30 to 40 years to go that stage, because we are not sufficient in normal electric power. So government is actually trying to bring those grid, to add the grid. But what will be the, the two tiers implementation is implication here. One is that government can take the drastic steps that farmland, because we are the agrarian society, you see now. But UK, I can't say that you are the agrarian. So 60% farmers still in agriculture. So government must take the step that the land which belongs to the farm should not be used for the industry development. But question is, do we have extra land that can be occupied? Second, if the government cannot take that steps, higher education institution like this, and the bright students, they can actually have they should create a special awareness among the dwellers, among the actual villagers, among the nationwide, that these lands should not be occupied for creating that big industry or big profit and so on. I think this is the only steadily a building awareness can help not to take. Then government can move some other land to be used. Thank you.
So I think some of the key takeaways, quickly, I'm just going to give some words rather than sentences, as we have already crossed the time. So we have heard loud and clear that there is change. It is going to change. So there is going to be a huge transformation that we look at rural today. And some of the change agents could be the technology. Some of the aspects that are very important is education in terms of online education. I think massive open online resources, which I see coming in. Huge mobile penetration, so mobile technology in vogue in there. Then there is another aspect of, the mindset change. There could be an aspiration deficit among people who are not yet literate. So I think that aspiration deficit, who's going to take care? There has to be educationists. Then we are looking at government, the policy. I think each government today is looking at the village, because that's where they can do something, because urban is overpopulated, there is pollution, there are other environmental factors. So, and the other very important aspect is also the healthcare. Look at the healthcare, which is going to be the most booming sector in the years to come, not only in the rural, but in all areas. And the way the world is moving, we are looking at that aspect. So we have many buzzwords now, right from education to basic amenities. When in Nigeria, the case study and what has been talked about is something that we need to prioritize. What are the basic things that are required that has to be the do's, and what are the things which are going to be. So I think in a phased manner, we are looking at how we can create villages or the rural as, smart rural environments, having technology, a balance of well-being and peace, at the same time prosperity, and it will contribute to the overall economy of the government. So thank you all, and great having great experts in the panel. So round of applause for each of the panelists. Thank you.